Well, good evening. I call the special meeting of the Ames City Council to order on Tuesday, January 16th. It's a time we look forward to seeing all the different opportunities for investing in our community, as well as providing equipment to our staff. So we'll turn it over to Steve and Rich.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to introduce our 5-year capital improvement plan from fiscal years 2024-25 through 2028-29. We're going to be looking ahead 5 years. I think department heads have done a great job trying to prioritize some of the major projects we're going to be working on. Not only is there a description of the projects, but for those of you who are interested, we also have the financing strategy for each one of them. We're going to have the departments go over each one. I don't expect you to make any final decisions regarding this recommendation. We will offer input to the public next week, but really your final decisions will be made at your final budget wrap-up with the operating budget and the CIP, okay? The other thing I'd like to say is this is a year in the CIP, I'm going to try to emphasize the theme of catch-up. Because of rising costs of projects, interest rates, delay in receiving equipment, there are a lot of projects that were approved in this year's CIP that haven't been completed yet. So rather than pile on and place more money in the future years, you'll notice sometimes in some of the CIPs, we've lowered the amount in the first 2 years of the CIP, but I don't want you to think we're going to lower our workload. We're going to be using that to catch up. Some of those projects will be carried forward into 24-25. And many times you'll see departments had to slide projects out. Sometimes the cost went up, all right? And they've reduced projects too. Also, we can keep in line with our projected rate increases for some of our utilities, which we promised last year, along with the impact on our property taxes if they require GO bonds or the use of local option tax fund. So you'll see some of these areas where we caught up. We're going to catch up in the first couple of years of the CIP. All right. So we'll go through the book. We'll try to move briskly through this. If you have any questions, please interrupt the department heads as they go over some of the highlights. We're not going to go through every page. It's there for you to read in the future. And there's many weeks to go over this, to look at it. But some of the highlights of each one of their operating areas.
Steve, can I ask just one question before we start that would be helpful for all of the areas? And I wonder, Corey, if you could give us just a little insight. A year ago, we were dealing with super high construction costs, and maybe for the last 2 years. But now we're looking at some increased rates of borrowing. Municipalities have higher bond rates. And can you give us just a couple thoughts as far as how that impacts the way you would want us to think as council about the CIP?
Sure. Last year, I think we had projected we were going to use about 5% as a borrowing cost. And that was very conservative, I think, at the time. I believe our borrowing costs were around 4% for the last issuance we had. We also used 5% for our borrowing cost. And Steve mentioned there was some delay in projects. And I think the thought that we try to avoid borrowing money before it was ultimately necessary really is the catch-up thought process behind some of this budget. So I think the departments did a really good job of recognizing we're not borrowing at 2% anymore. So there's a significant cost in borrowing the money and not doing the project over a year or so later. So we really took that into account. I think that was, from a financing perspective, that was a key component as the departments tried to schedule their projects.
So in essence, you've sort of baked in that higher interest rate environment into the way in which you've laid out these projects. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, and we modified some of the terms. I think traditionally for most of the capital improvement projects, we've had a 12-year term. So we've borrowed and repaid it back in 12 years. For the indoor pool, which is the primary component of our borrowing for fiscal year 24-25, we've gone out to a 20-year term, which is, I think, typical for traditional buildings and structure type of borrowing. So we've built it in what we think is a reasonable amount. We've checked with our financial advisor on their projections too. They're more in tune with what's going on in the marketplace. So we think we're in a conservative spot kind of going forward.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Rich Higgins with the Ames Fire Department. I have a total of 3 projects totaling a little over $2.6 million tonight that I'll be sharing with you. We'll be starting on page 7 of the CIP and working through page 11. The first project is one that you've seen before. This is a replacement for Fire Engine 2. We have this in the 25-26 year. We did have to do a cost increase. And working with our vendors, we have learned in year 2027, EPA will have emission standards, which will reduce by 75% the amount of nitrous oxide that is allowed for emissions. Well, that comes with a cost. And so what we were paying previously for the motor that goes in the fire engine has gone up by $100,000. And so anything that rolls off the assembly line in 2027 needs to meet that EPA requirement. Right now, we've learned too that apparatus are still 40 to 48 months out for build time. So anything that we order today, we'll be looking at 28, 29 and down the road. So it will meet that EPA emission standard. So we've had to increase the cost for that by about 8.6% of what we paid last year. There's also some NFPA standards with the braking systems, anti-skid, also some of the traction control systems that have gone up in price that are required on apparatus. So the same engine that we bought back in 2022 in September at $774,000 is now the same engine is $950,000 in today's dollars. So we're playing some catch up there. The nice thing with engine 2, we will keep that apparatus. Remember, our vehicle replacement plan is for every 15 years. We want to keep the apparatus and then an additional 10 if we can in reserve status. This engine 2 would be a great candidate. It's in a decent shape that would allow us to be able to refurbish it and keep it as a reserve apparatus for those calls that come in after when we have a vehicle down for service or when we have crews that are out on a fire and we have additional crews come back to backfill. We do have simultaneous calls, so that allows us to respond that way.
So this project includes the refurbishing of 2 to keep it in a backup status. You see that? And also remind the council and the public, we do a great job of putting away money on an annual basis for replacement. Remember, most of our vehicles, but in terms of large fire engines, we don't. We geo-bond those. We borrow money from them. We don't have a depreciation account for that. The amount every year would be very substantial for the operating budget to handle that. So.
Correct. And Iowa State does pay 25% of our debt service that we carry on our apparatus. Jumping to page 11, we have the addition. This is a new one you have not seen before, but this is purchasing engine 4 for a future fire station number 4. You probably saw in Steve's capital improvement message, he talked about the addition of station 4 down the road, something that we need to start looking at as part of the 2040 plan. One thing I really want to emphasize, this is at 5 years out. This is a project that we can slide, push out, or we can advance forward if need be, but we want to get a placeholder in there, and you can see that costs continue to go up, I think about 6% as we work with our vendors for fire apparatus. So that will really be dictated on where Station 4 comes into play. But we want to get that as a placeholder in there. And then jumping back to page 10, likewise, you've seen this before. This is our station alerting system. We had it in there last year, just moving it up another year. We're making things work at all 3 fire stations. This is when you call 911, it goes through Ames Police. They hop on the computer-aided dispatch. They're able to hit a button simultaneously that will dispatch either 1, 2, or 3 of the fire stations to get them to respond to your call. The system is starting to age. It's over. It's now 15 years old. And as you know, as technology, you got to keep up with it. And so we have this in our replacement schedule and would cover all 3 fire stations and also include the dispatch component for Mary Greeley Medical Center. It continues to function, but we've lost a little bit of the operational, such as the window you see there. Those are in all of the rooms that we have, and it would bring up the actual address and the nature code of the call. That does not work anymore. The vendor is not able to support that, so it's time to replace that system. We still hear the audible. Most of the features still work that we need to get out the door to serve the community. Any questions?
Chief, on the page 9, is that engine number 2 going to be delivered in 25, 26? So that's exempt from the $100,000 engine?
It will not. It will. So if we were to order that engine today, it would not be in here until probably looking at 4 years out, 2028. So it will meet the emission standard, and we'll have to have that added in there.
So you pay for it in advance then? Is that the way it works? Or?
We budget. I think we typically budget for it and then carry forward until we make it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So one thing that I did not highlight is that working with our vendors, we're able to order an engine today and not pay for it until it is delivered. So this is an apparatus that I hope to be back in the next couple of months with a plan to advance that purchase, not in the CIP, but knowing that we could place the order and not pay for it until the 28, possibly 29 year. That's how far back fire apparatus are.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Electric.
I wanted to be done quickly, but I'm not going to start on the halfway into the slides. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, Donald Com, Director of Electric Services. We also are here to talk about our capital improvement plan for the next 5 years. Sure I can. Typically, what Electric Services does is we break it up into these major groups, and this is how I'll be going through it. This is the way we do it each year. Talk first on what we call beneficial electrification, followed by our transmission, then distribution projects, and then we break up the power plant. Overall, the next 5 years, we're asking to spend or getting approval to spend slightly less than $22 million. This is actually a decrease from where we were last year by a couple of $1 million. So we've actually kind of backed off a little bit as per what Mr. Shanker was talking about here a little bit ago. Let's start with beneficial electrification. Basically, the two projects that are in our program for the coming years, one is advanced metering infrastructure. This is nothing new. In fact, there's only one new project that Electric is asking throughout all of these, but you've seen this last year. Again, advanced metering infrastructure is a critical component that will not only allow us to start offering more advanced rate making, and what I mean by that is we can start offering time of use rates, which will both benefit our customers, and then it'll also allow us to better manage our customers' electric use. So it's a benefit for the utility and a benefit for the customers. The other thing that we have in here this year under the beneficial electrification is electric vehicle infrastructure. These are basically electric vehicle chargers. We currently have 10 places, but 20 cables that you can hook up and charge your vehicle across the city that are owned by us. The numbers below that, we try to show first what's in our 24-25 budget, which is a little less than $1 million under this heading. And then overall of the 5-year budget of roughly 11% of our budget's going towards beneficial electrification. The second grouping is the transmission and distribution.
Don, can I just take you back just one second? So I get asked this question a lot on EV infrastructure. So is this something that we're doing? Is our approach to EV infrastructure responsive in that as the number of EVs, then we want to be responsive? Or is there a way in which providing additional EV infrastructure serves as an incentive for people to get the cars? So it acts more as a carrot rather than a responsive. What is your approach to that?
Very good question. So it's kind of a little bit of both. What we're seeing right now with the growth of electric vehicles, predominantly the data that we see is for Story County. We don't see it right down to the city of Ames specifically. And we're actually seeing a fairly aggressive growth rate in new applicants for electric vehicles and permits in Ames. If you start looking at some of the data, that the electricity that we're providing, not only to our customers, but to those that are passing through, month over month, we continue to sell more electricity to charging. And so it's not only is it a benefit to our customers, it's also a benefit to the utility. With all that said, the lion's share of electric vehicle charging is still done in the home, and with most people then just charging at home. this has offered a convenience that allow people when they come to City Hall. There's a charger here that they can use. We have them Hy-Vee West. We have them at Mary Greeley Medical Center. We have them at Innis Grove Park now. And we've also have one, what we call the DC fast charger that's over by the interstate. That is by far our highest used charger. And we're currently there. Tesla just put in 4 of their own right across the street.
Mm.
And it's not that we favor one over the other, but we're finding where they're all getting used one time or another. Did that answer your
Oh,
question?
yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
On the transmission and distribution side, on the transmission specifically, we have what are called 69,000 volt transmission lines that basically encircle the city. Those are starting to age, and we want to have a periodic maintenance program set up to where we're replacing some of the oldest of poles. We'd rather replace them before they break than after they break. And that's just a continuation of a project that we've had in the CIP for years. The one new one, which is highlighted in green, is the Ames electric system has its own fiber optic system. It's separate and different than the fiber optics that the city has here, and that's for a more secure system. And we operate what's called our SCADA system, or our control system on there. And we're getting to a point now where we have to start replacing that. And believe it or not, fiber optic communication has changed dramatically even since we first put it in. That's on page 21 within the book. Other projects that typically fall under transmission distribution, we work hand in glove with Public Works on street lights and line relocation. So as they come up with street projects, we have money in there to assist us in moving street lights, moving distribution lines and things like that. From a reliability improvement standpoint, we're looking at projects at 3 locations. One is at our Mortenson Road substation, where we're going to be putting in transformer protection. At our Dayton Avenue substation, we're doing continued maintenance there. And at the Vet Med substation, we're going to be replacing some switchgear. In many of these locations, we have old oil-filled breakers, and the standard right now is to put in something much more modern called SF6 breakers, which uses some unique gas so that when you're opening up the switch, you're not creating arcs and things like that. And that's what the work that we'll be doing in those substations in the coming years. For this budget, for this coming year, we're looking at slightly over $1 million. And then overall, the 5-year budget, it's about 44% of our overall 5-year budget will be spent in the transmission and distribution area. The next area, the third grouping, is power plant, and I'll kind of step through each of the individual units. So we have what are called peaking units or combustion turbine units. One of our 2 units, believe it or not, was designed initially for Saudi Arabia. So there are certain periods of time where it cannot be run. Ironically, it'd be run when it's very, very cold or when it's above freezing. There's a period of time in there where you have to worry about icing. So there's a system that we've been looking at called inlet heating, which is a project. Again, we've been having that on the books here for several years, and we're looking at some point when we need that capacity available that will initiate that project. I hate saying it this way, but it's like putting a bunch of hair dryers right on the front of the combustion turbine to basically preheat that air, but you're actually using the energy from the combustion turbine itself. There are other improvements that we want to do out at a combustion turbine site, and that includes remote terminal units. It's not necessarily that we're going to run them remotely, but it's sophisticated equipment that basically allows us to continue and monitor how they're operating, and we can bring that information back to the central plant. We also need a controls upgrade, and some of that equipment sits out in the elements. On days like today, it's obviously more difficult to run equipment like that, so we're looking at putting a weather protection. We're basically going to be putting an enclosure over some of the generating equipment that's out there. Unit 7, which is our smaller of our 2 baseload units, sits here at the end of Main Street. Right now, the 2 projects that we have on the books, we typically like to do a major overhaul periodically, And by doing minor overhauls, we can stretch that major overhaul out and not spend as much money. So we're able to do a minor, which then extends our ability to not have to do a major as quickly. And those are on page 30 and 31. And again, budget in 24-25 for power plant is about 2.2 million, which is about 45% of the 5-year budget. Looking at the other unit, unit number 8 is our newer baseload unit put in roughly 1982. Again, here we're going to be doing a major and a minor overhaul. We're also looking, because we continue to burn refuse-derived fuel, out in the later years, we're looking at some way of preventing the tube wear. So there are products out there that you can inject into the boiler that kind of protects some of the tubes. So as we look at burning refuse-derived fuel in the next few years, we're going to see if that is something that we need to do to protect the tubes more than what we're doing now. Beyond the 4 units themselves, we also have infrastructure that we've been working on. Load centers and breaker replacements within the power plant is one project. The building itself, some of those windows are a little bit drafty and could use some replacement, as well as an entry system that basically brings in some security for us and allows for eventually ADA compliance. We have the steps out there right now. From the derecho, we've been also looking at the best ways to make sure that we've got very, very, very reliable plants. So we've had on the books, in fact, it's going to engineering now for critical system generators. There's a couple pieces of equipment that you simply do not want to lose power to. We have battery systems that will last for several hours, but if we start getting into that 8-hour plus range, we want to have a critical generator on there to start up and protect the systems. And then the last thing on this page is the plant relays and control upgrades that we needed to have happen. Last few things, we have a fuel and waste system. The RDF bin, we're currently working on that right now to add metal. It was built out of what's called Cortan steel, which is a wonderful metal. We use that on some of our stronger steel transmission towers. The intent there is that the metal literally rusts, it dries, and it forms its own protective coating. Within the refuse-derived fuel bin, it never dries. So the metal has basically been eating itself through over the years, and we're replacing that with stainless steel and other things. That work is ongoing right now, and we have a few other modifications that we're looking at a couple of years out. And then the coal yard itself, we no longer burn coal. We've got a project right now to clean up that area, and then we have a second phase of that where we've got the old coal handling equipment, and if we truly choose never to go back to coal, at some point we'll remove the coal handling equipment and then bring that back to other uses that the city is currently looking at. Other things that we're looking at doing, we still have units 5 and 6 boilers. They actually happen in the top picture. They happen to kind of be behind the wall that's on the top and towards the left. And there are opportunities to make use of that space, whether we move into a new waste to energy facility, or if we're going to move into more storage. Having those boilers out of there provides the space that can be useful. And then we have a plant control Wi-Fi network that we've been talking about for a couple of years. So the key points, material lead time delays have caused staff to push projects out. We call it the electric slide.
Uh-huh.
All right.
That's good.
Okay.
Did you add the groans in the minutes?
Okay.
Thanks.
Fiscal year 24-25 budget and beyond, we're starting to shift some of our capital dollars more towards the improvements on the transmission and distribution system. Historically, we've spent considerably more money on the power plant and less on transmission and distribution. But we're kind of, if you notice from the numbers, we're kind of seeing an equal split. We've got some in beneficial electrification, then we've got an even split right now between power plant and transmission distribution. If you are wondering about demand side management, that will be covered under an O&M budget. So we still have all of that out there. That's part of the beneficial electrification and how we're meeting some of the climate action plan goals. Mentioned the beneficial electrification. It's really going to be our foundation, especially that advanced metering system, to allow us to offer new rates that will really, I think, give our ability to better interact with our customers by showing them more of how energy rates change. They can adjust their use of our electricity and benefit us and keep our future peaks as low as they possibly can. And then last, boiler tube life. And as you're aware, the natural gas prices continue to be critical elements. We're currently paying about 30% more for natural gas in 24 than we did in 23. And we have to continue to watch that as we continue to burn refuse-derived fuel in the next few years. We've also seen a greater emphasis in recycling. Resource Recovery is doing a great job with their cardboard. We're working with them on that, and I think the residents of Ames are also appreciating the ability to do more and more recycling. With that, are there any questions?
Any questions? Can you just remind us, when we had the derecho, we couldn't restart the power plant, and has that been rectified? Do we have a generator now, or a standby generator now out by the turbine that can start up, or has that project been done, or can you help me remember that?
I will say it has been done. So what the mayor's referring to is we do have one unit that the terminology in our industry is called black start capable, and combustion turbine number 1 has that capability. Short of the ultimate way to test that is have a blackout and start it up. But we've had a couple of our engineers, Curtis Spence and others, where we've run through all of the procedures and made all of the changes to that generator to where we believe that in that dire situation, we could start combustion turbine number 1 and bring the city back up without having to rely on the outside world, if you will, with the transmission, which is where we were stuck with it during the derecho.
Thank you.
Really fast, the solar array that we have for the city, what percentage of that has now been purchased? It could be good for people to hear that.
So what Mr. Garton's referring to is we have SunSmart Ames down by the airport. It's a 2 megawatt system. Solar, that solar system right now is about 80% spoken for. It's not that the rest of the energy goes to waste. We bring the rest of that energy into our own portfolio when we're using that for the betterment of all of the residents. But they're always for sale. So if anybody needs some more power packs, contact Joel Zook at 239-5177 if you'd like to buy a power pack.
Yep, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next time.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Walk you through the projects planned for the Water and Pollution Control Department. I'm going to start on page 38 is the summary for the water production and treatment. And as you're flipping to those pages, I just want to introduce to you a few folks here who are the ones who are actually implementing these projects. So Dustin Albrecht is with us, our environmental specialists, our environmental engineers, Matt Jacob, Dario Doparich, and Gary Eshelman, Water Plant Assistant Superintendent, is here as well. I think that was it. So the first project on page 29 is an addition to the Technical Services Complex. This is the 2-story building at the end of 5th Street that houses the Water Meter Division and the Laboratory Services Division. And this was one of those projects that we did have in the CIP a couple years ago. We pulled it out when prices were escalating on us as we needed to advance other higher priority projects. But this one has slipped back in there now. So what we're going to do is first the building itself, the existing building needs renovation, just the floors, ceilings, walls. It's 35 years now it's been in service. It needs just general renovation. But as a part of that, there's a very small conference room in there. We're going to split that conference room into half, create some offices for folks that are in cubicles right now, some file storage, the kitchenette in there that if you try really hard, you can get 3 people to sit together for lunch. We're going to convert that into a first aid room and a lactation room. And then in the footprint of where the old administrative offices were for the old water plant, we're going to add on a conference room space, a new kitchenette, some garage space, and also an elevator to be able to easier access the second floor of that building.
So when we're making those renovations, one of our goals in our climate action plan is to think about the climate footprint of our municipal buildings. Are there going to be any? Is that part of the calculus of any of these renovations in that building?
It will be. We've gone through an evaluation because the HVAC system in the old building was failing, and we had to move ahead with a replacement pretty much in kind. We talked with several mechanical engineers. They said if you tried to do this all and service the existing building and the new building simultaneously, the amount of gutting of ceilings and walls to get all the ventilation in place was going to be impractical. But certainly the new addition, we've not gone out and solicited design services yet, but LEED or LEED-like design is what we're looking for. For all of our projects, I've told consultants we don't want to buy a LEED certification. I don't want to pay for things that don't make sense for us. But where it does make sense, we are absolutely implementing those practices.
It just seems like this is the time when you're making those renovations to see what can we do towards our climate action plan goals.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the later projects we'll look at down at WPC, we are reconstructing the administration building. And we are working towards a net zero ready construction on that building, which is one of the future goals of the climate action plan.
Thank you.
Page 40 is a collection of miscellaneous equipment, major maintenance activities. 2 of the items in there that I'd call out is the addition of a 3rd lime slaker in 25-26. The plant was originally designed with that as a part of the concept for the plant, but it was something that we pulled out to try to keep the initial cost of the plant lower. But it'll be sliding in there right about the 9th year of operation of the facility. And then in 28-29 is a regular upgrade to the plant control software. So you've authorized money in the current year for us to do that, and we've got it on a 5-year replacement cycle. So page 41 is Lime Lagoon improvements. Last year, this page had about $1 million project to construct a new lagoon. We've backed that out now. A couple of years ago, we did a demonstration project trying to rebuild the under drains in one of the cells, and we wanted to see if that was successful before we moved ahead with it. It has been successful to the extent that we feel like we can skip the construction of this new Lime Lagoon cell. And it also has benefits on the operating budget too, because now that we're able to dewater this material to a greater degree, we can get rid of the same amount of lime in fewer wet tons when we contract for it. So our operating budget, instead of the 28,000 wet tons we had budgeted for in the past, you'll see we've reduced that to 25,000 wet tons this coming year. 42 is our advanced metering infrastructure. This was a project that we had anticipated would have been done by now, but it has been a victim of supply chain issues. And so it's continued to drag out. But we believe that this, regardless, this would be the last year that it would show in the CIP. Whatever volume is left after that, we believe would be within the quantity of what we normally budget in the operating budget. So it would just be picked up that way in the future. Page 43 is just to wrap up the current round of the water quality monitoring up in Ada Hayden. That's taking place during the summer of calendar year 23 and calendar year 24. So this is just the last little bit to get us through the second half of this coming summer.
John, on this one, if the map went a little further north, there's a lagoon north of the North Lake. And oftentimes there's a fair amount of green on that. And should we be sampling that as well? I'm concerned about nitrogen in Ada Hayden. Is that?
I believe that they are monitoring the inlets and outlets of those wetland cells. One thing that isn't worth remembering is that the purpose of all of those wetlands around the lake is to capture the nutrients.
Totally.
So
But I'm just curious if those are being monitored as well.
I believe they are. Am I correct, Dustin? I'm pretty sure that they are monitoring that as a part of this study.
Do you have any results of the monitoring from this past year?
The preliminary results that I saw looked very similar to the last set 5 years ago. No significant change in water quality. Page 44 is another one of those projects that's been frustratingly slow. But when you're spending somebody else's money, you have to kind of go along on their timeline. But this is an emergency standby generator for the wells in the youth sports complex, being funded through a FEMA grant. So this is one of the projects that Steve referenced. The money is currently budgeted in the current year, and we're going to zero out that project in the current year and showing it where we think we'll actually spend the money, which would be year 2 of the CIP. '45 is the installation of variable frequency drives on the last 2 pumps at the Sam pump station. This allows us to ramp those pumps up and down as opposed to just going from an off to instantly on and running at full speed. That lets us soften pressure swings in the distribution system, so it hopefully will help minimize the occurrence of water main breaks. It'll also allow the operators to match the speed of the pumps closer to what the actual demand is by customers. So it would reduce the number of times that we have to start and stop pumps, also helping manage pressure in the distribution system. Page 46 is our physical and cybersecurity improvements. We've got a number of cyber activities budgeted in the current year. So these 2 are more physical security. So we have fencing at the pump station and elevated tank out at the intersection of State and Mortensen, and then also updates to the door and access control system at the water plants.
Can you, since you mentioned it, can you comment on what we are doing to protect our water and wastewater plants from hacking or cyber breaches or whatever?
Yeah, so our systems are operating through multiple firewalls. So any internet traffic, for example, that reaches our system is going through the city's, the business side firewalls, and then passing through a second set of firewalls to reach our system. There's a big part of the security of the access control system that's involved in just keeping the software up to date, the patches and everything like that. At WPC, one of the things, the way that system has been designed is that it's just physically isolated from the internet. That facility itself is not reachable through an internet connection at all.
So that's at the WPC. How about the water treatment plant?
The water plant, it can be, again, it's got to go through a series of controlled firewall access.
Yeah. I mean, you're aware of it. Others read about it, hear about it in terms of getting in there and trying to tinker with and I know that you're more concerned than we are, about that. I know you've undertaken some initiatives. I was just curious if those are all implemented. And
yeah, we did. We've completed a risk and resilience assessment that looked at both physical and cyber. There's a lot of activity at the federal level on cyber control. We're anticipating sometime this year that EPA will announce some sort of a cyber entity that will be there for assisting utilities. So there's a lot of activity that continues to happen there.
And so you've done everything you possibly can. There's nothing else you'd recommend investing in to go to the highest level possible?
Everything that we think is reasonable, we're undertaking.
Right. Thank you.
Page 47 would be a new elevated tank in the Prairie View Industrial Center. This is a project you've seen for several years, and we're doing what we've done the last several years, was just let this hang out in the mid part of the 5-year CIP. That way it's accounted for in the rate projections that you see. And so if we need to accelerate it because an industry has come in that's going to create that need, we can move it and not significantly impact rates moving forward. '48 is a wellhead rehabilitation project. A few years back, we did some of the wells, and so now we're going to come back and finish them. 2 pieces here. One, the control panels on some of the wells currently have both high voltage and low voltage components all in the same cabinet. What we're doing is segregating that. One of the more common reasons that we would need to work on those components are for either controls or communication, low voltage side. So if we can put all the low voltage equipment in a single contained box, then our staff are not exposed to the high voltage side when they go out and have to work on the wells. And then again, a replacement of control systems and equipment, the programmable logic controllers that are used. Those are the brains that operate at each of the remote sites. They have a definite life cycle to them, where they're no longer supported by manufacturers and are in need of being replaced. 49 is going to add 2 new pumps and variable frequency drives to the water plant pump station. Again, these are components that were envisioned as the time the plant was constructed, but were delayed to keep that initial first cost as low as possible.
Would that increase the capacity of the plant?
Not the capacity of the plant itself, but it will increase the amount of pumping capacity that we have coming from that facility. So right now we've got, from the old plant site, we've got an ability to move about 15 to 16 million gallons per day. At the water plant site right now, we can move 5 million gallons per day. And a part of that limitation is just the capacity of the distribution system on East 13th Street. And so some of the distribution improvements that John Joyner and his team are working on are to help us increase that pumping capacity leaving the water plant. And the last project on the drinking water side is to repaint the water tower at Mortensen and County Line. At the time that tank was constructed, this was a new coating system. We were told that it would have a 25-year life, so that's where we've planned the replacement. We get up there, clean interior, exterior of those tanks every few years. So we'll have a couple more opportunities to take a look at that coating system. If it's still holding up well, this could be a project that you see slid in the future. So now we'll move to the other end of the municipal water cycle with the water pollution control facility. Page 52 is the big project down there. This is the nutrient reduction modifications. We went through that in quite a bit of detail last spring, and the cost estimates that we received from Strand Associates, our design professionals, last month were still consistent with those estimates from May. So the estimates are still holding in there. We are 90+% complete with the design. Then it will need to move through permitting with the state before we move to a bid phase. The Iowa DNR is currently evaluating whether or not they feel that an environmental and cultural assessment is required. If they decide that that needs to happen, that would probably postpone our project here for about another 6 months before we're ready to take it out for bids.
John, does this include does this phase include the new office building or relocated
does.
office building?
Yes, it does.
So we're looking at $110 million now for nutrient reduction
Yeah, over 2 phases.
over 2 phases.
Yeah, that's correct.
And remind me, wasn't it like 70 or $80 million initially, or?
77.9.
Yeah, that's what we showed in last year's CIP, but these estimates now should be pretty spot on with what we looked at in May.
So we've gone from 77 to $110 million.
Yeah.
Correct. A lot has to do with the borrowing, the interest costs.
And
That's
that-
why we're making adjustments in other projects to keep the cost down. So the effect on the rate customer will be about the same what we said when it was 77.
So without going into a lot of detail, the SRF loan program has been rumored to potentially be being either reduced in quantity or availability. If we can't borrow from SRF, how would that impact? Is it the ratepayer that would pay more because of the borrowing costs going up significantly?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the significant advantage of the SRF
Right.
is the interest rates that
Right.
come with it.
You're what, 1 or 2% versus going to market for 5% or whatever. Or-
Yeah, so the SRF is currently at 3.64%.
Oh, okay.
Every 3 months now, they're readjusting.
And it used to be at its lowest, what?
2% was what it
Okay.
was for a long time.
So it's both interest rate adjustment as well as potentially a diminished amount of funding available? Is it just interest rate fluctuation? I'm Corky.
I
How
think
much?
it's interest rate fluctuation.
Is that what it is? Okay.
There has been discussion at the federal level, it's all caught up in the whole federal government, what's the right level that they're going to continue to fund the SRF programs in the future. Page 53 is our cogen system maintenance. This specific project has to do with the fog or the fats, oils, and grease receiving station. So the current receiving station is the black box that you see there. Trucks just come up the gravel drive and, connect by that little pipe sticking out the side of the box and dump. These improvements are designed to help us better accept fats, oils, and grease, help us improve our ability to accept high-strength waste, which would generate more gas and allow us to generate more on-site electricity, and also accommodate the future potential of food waste diverted from the resource recovery facility. So this would pave this area to give greater access in wet or winter times for vehicles to get in there, as well as replacing some of the piping, valves, pumps to be compatible with that newer system. The next project is our watershed-based nutrient reduction project. Council has authorized us to spend $200,000 per year, and you see that's the funding level that we're continuing to show for the sewer utility. But you see that the amount of grants and dollars brought in from other partnerships exceeds what the city is putting into this. As an example, we're hoping in the next month to bring to you a 28E agreement between the city, Story County, and the Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship for a wetland project north and west of Ames. This wetland would intercept the runoff from 2,200 acres, so this is a significant project. This project is being designed entirely by Ducks Unlimited. They're funding the design, so they're providing it to us at no cost. And then the 28E agreement would have IDOLs paying 100% of the construction cost, and then the ongoing maintenance being shared by the county and by the city.
Great.
55, again, is just an assortment of equipment repairs, maintenance upgrades. We've gone through this list and confirmed that nothing in here is going to be impacted by the nutrient project. So we made sure we were not double budgeting projects just because that nutrient project is so pervasive throughout the facility. 56 is just a handful of improvements to lift stations. Notably in that last year, we're looking to replace one of the small lift stations. We believe that the hydraulics will work to be able to eliminate that and just replace it with a new gravity sewer line. And the last project I have for you is maintenance of the clarifiers at WPC. We had this on hold a few years back while we worked through the future of the nutrients project, wanted to make sure that the clarifiers were going to have a role in the new nutrient reduction mode. But where on the elevated tank, I was talking about a 25-year life on the coating system, very different environment here. And so we're typically 15 to 20 years is what we're looking at. So this project in year 3 would look at recoating the below water surface seal members of those clarifiers. And those are the projects that we're presenting for you this year.
Any questions? All right. Thank you, John. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, that's the library.
Just gentlemen.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. My mistake.
Is that an additional money we're giving? Do we put it on that list? I can see that we take more than this. You know what I'm saying? That include the additional.
Good evening. As we get started tonight on the Public Works portion, I'd like to take just a moment to, you already know them all already, but to introduce and thank all the Public Works division heads that put a lot of work into this plan and put a lot of work in making sure the projects are successful. So McKinley Ritter with administration, my own division, sorry. And Tracy Peterson with engineering. And Justin Clausen with operations. Bill Schmidt with resource recovery. And Damian Pregetzer with traffic. So thanks to them all. And as usual, as we get started, we'd like to just show a brief recap video of the successful projects that we had last construction season.
It's my favorite of this video.
I think the citizens of Ames are very fortunate that the mayor and council are willing to appropriate funds to improve our street system. In other cities, it's easy to make cuts. The first cuts you make
Right.
are probably in infrastructure improvements. And unfortunately, you all realize that delaying those improvements are probably going to, until a facility fails totally, is going to end up costing more money later on. But we realize everybody's frustrated. It seems like a long time during the summer. You'll notice we're totally reconstructing streets, not just putting an overlay on it. We hope they'll remain patient with us and understand it's a relatively short-term inconvenience for something, improvement's going to last a very long time. Hopefully, we will never come back in the life of their existence in those homes again. That's how long this improvement will last. So we're cognizant of it, but I think in the long run, the council's making the right decision. And we just every year have to ask for patience a little bit, because I know it's very inconvenient on people, very frustrating, and we realize it too. And we try to push our contractors to move as swiftly as possible. We appreciate that, their patience, and we appreciate your willingness to proactively invest in our street system.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So as we get started in the plan, we have the utilities program. So this map shows the locations of the 5-year program of all the utility projects that we have proposed. So we begin with the water distribution activity. And I'll show a slide here next showing the locations that we have planned for 24-25. So we have Bar Drive, which is kind of up around the mall area. Then 17th and Douglas, and Kellogg south of the hospital.
John, just a quick question. I know that the president came out with a, I think about 10-year plan trying to get rid of all the lead services. Can you explain, is the water service from the main to a house, if that's a lead service, is that the city's responsibility to take care of that, or is that the homeowners? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
Because it's mentioned in your description about the 186 active lead services, estimated cost of $1 million.
right. So in the city of Ames, by our ordinance, and as in most communities, but not all, that is the responsibility of the homeowner. From the tap of the water main all the way through into the house is the responsibility of the homeowner. However, when we do a project like this and we encounter a lead service, then through the project, we do replace that lead service all the way through into the meter. And then, as you mentioned, the federal mandate, we'll be working with the WPC department to see which locations and the number of lead services that we have and creating that plan.
So if we're doing work in that area, we replace it. If we're not, that becomes a homeowner's responsibility.
That's right.
Thank you.
Do we have an estimate on when we might be completing all of these?
As far as lead services, we have a general estimate, but we're finding out that the older records, and those are older type infrastructure, are not great. So as we make progress, we find that there's more to do than we had originally planned. I think there's around 300. Is that the number? Around that area. So quite a few, but not really a significant amount when you think of all the services we have in our community. Then next we move into the sanitary sewer activity. And you'll see the sanitary sewer improvements is one of those projects that Steve mentioned at the beginning of this evening, with the first 2 years being down as compared to traditional. We do have projects in the works, though, sanitary sewer improvement projects, inflow and infiltration projects that we're working on. They're SRF funded, and we're working through those SRF requirements to complete those projects. Then we move into the stormwater utility activity. There's 3 particular programs I'd like to highlight. One is the stormwater erosion control. That's on page 64. So this project will be down at the bottom of the North Dakota Valley between Lincoln Way and Delaware. So that'll be on the west side of North Dakota. Next on page 66 is low point drainage. These 2 improvements will be in the South Ale Tea Garden area. The top left one is the south end behind Ken Merrill, behind the homes on Ken Merrill. And then the bottom right one is kind of the northeastern part of Tea Garden. That's down below the Crystal cul-de-sac.
John, do those complete our work down in the Tea Garden area? Or are there still improvements to be made with drainage? I know the residents down there have been concerned with that for years.
Yeah, that's right. Over a number of years, we've made a lot of improvements. And I don't know, other than these two, Tracy, do we have any more in that area planned?
We continue to monitor, we are in a drought, so until we, get some more rain and continue to monitor the improvements we've made, that they are making the difference. These are the final ones that I know about.
And then the last stormwater activity I wanted to point out was the stormwater quality improvements. So this will be on the former Sturgis acreage. So this project will be to install quality improvements that will prevent sediment and nutrient transport into the Ada Hayden area. And rounding out the utilities section is resource recovery. So we put this budget together with our waste to energy business as usual in mind. And as you know, we continue to evaluate options. So as we're preparing our budget next year, or I should say the fall of this year for next year, we will hopefully have come back to you with options and receive direction on the future of the solid waste management. And then we'll incorporate, of course, the improvements that need to be made to accomplish that. But the first year, 24-25 of the resource recovery improvements includes several items to help us continue moving forward on our recycling initiative. So the inset on the right shows the one-stop shop recycling area that we have set up on the northeast corner of the resource recovery plant. So that's the cardboard. It's been getting a lot of business. That's the one on the right with the yellow staircase. So it's been a very successful program in a short amount of time. So the plan includes a mobile trailer. So we'll be able to take that to our partner communities. We'll have to decide what frequency helps serve them the best, whether that's weekly, monthly, whatever the case may be, but to help our partner communities with their recycling efforts. Additional roll-offs and bins. So we'll be able to expand the number of locations, expand the number of materials that we're collecting at those locations. And 2024 will be the last calendar year of our yard waste contract. So this includes funding in case we need to take that activity on as a city ran activity. So there's funds in there to create a laydown area just across the street at the former coal yard so that we could take on that activity and potentially expand our recycling operation in that same area as well.
John, could you give us just a little more insight into the recycling? I think there's a lot of excitement about that. From our perspective on the city, we're encouraging a ramp up of people utilizing this, but are there costs to us? So if more people bring the recyclables, will we have a corresponding increase in cost? And how do we model that?
Sure. The costs have been minimal so far. It's just some roll-offs that we've had to purchase and get those in place. We're able to transport the cardboards with our own crews. Right now we're going to International Paper. We have two other options that we can work with in Des Moines as well. So when that gets full, we're able with our own equipment and our own staff that's already on the clock to haul that down there to International Paper. And we do receive payment for that, for the cardboard. So we do, I think, net a little bit of revenue on that material stream, and the others with the mixed paper, the plastics, I think we probably break even with our market on that. And then with the metals, as we've been doing with the in-plant process, we're able to market those. We have a couple of different outlets, and we see which outlet we're able to get the best price for the metals. So we do make a small revenue profit on the metals.
And so that's really encouraging. I wasn't even necessarily assuming that we were even breaking even. So we're not having to subsidize the recycling. It's at least paying for itself. I don't want to overstate that, but am I saying that correctly?
Right. That's the way the pilot's been working out. But as we expand, we'll have to take a closer look to what those expenses are to expand, and then the operational expenses of having a larger program as well. But that's what I was mentioning is just with this pilot that we have.
So far, so good.
So far, so good.
All right. Thanks.
Well, the other thing that's not factored in is the fact that you're burning less trash potentially. And so that may be saving on natural gas. I mean, I think there's a double benefit potentially.
Double benefit, but we'll see in our operating budget what's happening. Remember, gas is going up, so we want to actually, for the electric customers, which we are electric customers, many of us are, we're going to burn, remember, we have the purchase of the gas, the wedding cake approach, so we have to decrease the amount of waste that's going to be burned, right? Now, that's good for the electric customers. There will be less burning, therefore there's less revenue to the resource recovery plant during that time. And we have to reduce the amount that goes in there. We're going to do it by recycling. But that's less revenue coming into the resource recovery plant. So you're going to see, we're going to have to adjust that, at least in the interim, to cover our operating costs in the resource recovery plant that remain. And you're going to see, remember, there's two ways you pay for that, either through the per capita subsidy from all of us, that's property tax, or through tipping fees, increase in tipping fees to the hauler. Now I don't want to get into this, it's going to affect our operating budget. You raised it. The per capita is paid out of the general levy, which is pretty much now restricted. So probably you're going to see an increase in the tipping fee. That's the fee you charge the haulers to come across the floor to dump what's remaining into our system. The fact is that we're going to do a lot of positive things for the environment, but there's going to be an increased cost for services like recycling and other sorts. So I can't say it's going to break even. We're going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it, extra for it.
John, we received an email from a very excited resident who was thrilled by the cardboard and paper recycling. So I wanted to just pass on that enthusiasm for what's happening, and I look forward to seeing more.
Yeah, good. Thank you for passing that along. So that concludes the utilities section. Next, we move into transportation. So this map shows all 5 years of our transportation projects. You see it's a very busy map. And a couple of projects that I want to highlight. First one would be the South 16th Street widening. So that'll be from University to Vet Med Trail. That'll be widening that road to match the cross section that you see from there over to South Duff. So it'll be 4-lane with turn lanes and shared use path facilities on both sides of that roadway. Yeah.
Now,
And then as you'll see when we get in the traffic section, the traffic signal program includes traffic signal improvements at University that coincide with this project.
I want to emphasize again that this is an institutional road and therefore not technically our responsibility, but a lot of the pressure that's being placed to widen it is because we extended Grand Avenue down teed into South 16th Street. So we believe there's a responsibility on the city's part to help correct or mitigate the congestions we're causing on it. So it's very unusual that we would pay for this institutional road, but I think in this one case, unusual case, we're recommending we do pay for it.
And the bike trail will extend, just to confirm this, all the way to University.
Right.
Yeah, I've talked about this for 10 years. That's just such a huge improvement in our trail system. So thanks for that.
It finally sunk in.
Yeah.
No, I just had to have the right project.
Is the plan to leave that hawk signal at the crossing of the trail?
Yes.
And is that working? Do we know, Damien?
As far as I know, I don't think we've got any complaints.
Yeah, it was designed for this widening, so we shouldn't have to touch it.
Good.
As far as I know, we have not gotten complaints. Working well.
That's a really important location because visibility is very challenging in terms of people
Mhm.
coming through there. So I really appreciate having that
Right.
there.
And the other I wanted to highlight is the Collector Street improvements. The location for this year will be Oakland, and that'll be from Hawthorne, which is at the forefront of that picture, to Franklin, which is at the rear. I'm sure it's a project the neighborhood as well as the adjoining public is looking forward to. Continuing to transportation, we have shared use path activities. So these activities include trail expansions, crossing improvements, as well as ongoing maintenance plan. And this map shows the 5-year of shared use path projects.
I'm just curious, is there any way that that map could at some point, like maybe next year, be incorporated into the CIP book? Because that's a really helpful map. And so just for someone who's looking at this, that would really be helpful to slide that in.
Yeah, and we can post these on our website as well.
Could you do just a quick overview of what happens when? I know a lot of people, me included, are interested in what happens when.
Sure.
Oh, what at all?
No, that's okay. Yeah. Okay. Starting out in the shared use path expansion at the South Duff Trail connection along Billy Sunday Road, and that was my next slide. So I'll go there and then go back.
These are listed, look on your page 88.
Page 8. Yep.
For the public, they'll be able to identify those sections too.
So that'll connect at the end of Billy Sunday Road near the animal shelter, animal park, go down through the sports complex, and then connect into the Skunk River Trail. So it'll be a nice connection through there. We also have beginning to design the Moore Park Trail. That's the box up there by Vinker. And then we have construction for that trail in the second year, which is 25-26. Also in 25-26, we have South Dayton Avenue. That'll be from East Lincoln Way down to South 16th Street. So that's the purple kind of in the bottom right corner. We have the Mortensen Path from Dickinson to South Dakota. So that's a small section that's been, in essence, missing since that development came into play. And we also have the South Duff Path from South 5th Street to South 3rd. Another short but important connection to connect two trails, as well as continue to connect the through trail on South Duff.
And so I thought that the grand, and is some of this going to be subject to change based on the bike ped master plan?
Right. And that's a great segue because the fourth year, we didn't identify a specific location. With that being completed this year, we left kind of a placeholder for a priority based on that plan.
And so I thought that the Grand Avenue piece would happen within this 5-year CIP. Is that not, is that happening?
Yeah, Grand Avenue.
This year.
Yeah, the
And-
previous one I mentioned was South Duff.
Okay.
Yep.
And will we have some kind of formal grand opening for the portion along underneath Duff, that new extension?
We sure can.
Because that's a game changer. So we just,
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
It's a very nice
But
path.
it'd be nice. I don't know the public really knows that it's there yet.
Right. Yeah, we can work with Susan Goyazda and get something
Yeah,
on that.
cool.
That'd be
Thanks.
nice.
Great. This is really exciting.
And then the last one to point out is 24th Street from Grand to Duff.
Mm.
So that's another good connection as well.
That one he said on Grand though, under the train overpass.
Yeah.
On Grand from Lincoln Way to that one is in here. Is that what you said, or no?
Yeah, that's in the current CIP.
The current years.
Yeah.
So not. Yeah. Okay. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
and Damien, is that under design yet?
Yeah, we did a field walkthrough before.
Oh, good.
So yeah, it's under design.
Okay.
So that project's under design.
Great.
John, on 25, 26, 27, Mortensen Road path, Dickinson Road to South Dakota, Is that on the south side of Mortensen then? Wasn't on the north side responsibility of the developer to put that in?
It's the city's responsibility because they did a trade-off. This was like 20 years ago when the development first started. So this small connection, because of whatever trade-off was with the developer at that time, this small section is the city responsibility.
Okay.
But I think that's on the north, isn't it, Damien?
What?
The Mortensen Path from Dickinson to South Dakota.
Trails along the
That's cool.
south.
South side?
Yeah,
So the north side's in.
yeah, that's what I was,
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to verify, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's,
Then next we have traffic improvements. There's 3 particular programs that I'll highlight under traffic. First is our intelligent traffic system, ITS. This is our traffic adaptive system. So right now, our phase 4 is the 24-25 project, and we have a grant that's already been accepted for that. So that's in the development process. And then phases 5 and 6 will be in the second and third year of the CIP. And from my understanding, we're going to try to do a joint grant application to the DOT to get both those phases done together. The next on page 93 is traffic system capacity improvements. This is 13th and Grand. So the first year, 24-25, will be for preliminary design and right-of-way evaluation. One of our engineers has done a preliminary layout, kind of a conceptual layout, and this layout greatly minimizes the amount of right-of-way that will be required compared to the previous plan from 15 years ago.
This is going to make people so excited.
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Of anything I've seen, I'm like, oh boy.
Mhm.
So then in year 2, in 25-26, we have the construction programmed.
So the DOT is going to be doing resurfacing on Grand this coming year, is that right?
Right.
So will they still just go through this intersection, resurface it, or they're going to stop short on both?
Yeah, I believe they're just going to carry through. Damien, if you had any conversations with them or Justin, I guess, in particular.
They're going to stop short. We gave them this plan and they're going to gap that.
Okay. Next on page 94 is traffic signal program. And this is the one I mentioned earlier that'll be at University and South 16th, coordinating with the roadway project. Next in transportation, we have street rehab. The one thing I wanted to point out is the 5th year Lincoln Way Bridge replacement. So this is the bridge over Iowa Creek, and it's not in any imminent. It's not any imminent concern. However, it is to the point where we need to be thinking about complete replacement of that bridge. So the traditional repair techniques aren't feasible for that bridge. So in the 5th year, that'll be for project design, and then in 29-30, we'll program a complete replacement of that bridge.
Is that one of the bridges that has the potential for the, I don't know, fragile concrete, whatever that issue was that was identified a number of
The
years ago?
Critical fracture.
Yeah.
I don't believe so. Yeah, the report did not show that. We have a biannual report that evaluates those. Then rounding out transportation as well as the public works portion of the CIP is airport. So you probably recall this used to be one sheet called airport improvements. So with suggestion and advice from Nancy, we've divided this into 3 separate sheets to hopefully better illustrate the projects and make it more clear to the public what we have planned. So the first new sheet would be the airside improvements. That's on page 110. So this sheet would be intended, as the name suggests, for any improvements that's related to air traffic. So the first year we have funding for the design of the main runway 119. And then subsequent years will be programming for the construction. The second new sheet is on page 111, and this will be specific to the entryway improvements. So the first project that we'll undertake will be repaving the entryway road. And then the second phase will be the green there. So it'd be re-landscaping that entryway area, really making a visual improvement in that area. And then split into two separate phases will be expansion of the parking lot, which you see here in yellow. So once all those projects completed, that entryway, that entrance into the airport will be really improved and look very nice. Then the third new program that was created for airport is the facility improvements. And the first year project under facility improvements would be drainage improvements on the airfield. So
Before you go on, let me turn your attention to page 109. Turn to page 109 about the airport. Kind of summarize what John just said. But if you look at the total column, do you see that page 109 total? So you'll see over the 5 years for those three projects, about $21 million. Now, the good news is outside funding from federal and state grants pay about 17 million of that. Pretty substantial. But there is a local match required, small local match. Usually we try to have the match come out of our airport improvements fund. That's if there's any excess revenue from the operating costs each year, it's transferred into that. Our revenue, net revenue from the farm revenue we have, we earmark that for it. So you can see over the 5 years, we're going to use 600,000 for that purpose, but that's not enough to cover the match. So you'll see for the first time, we're using a substantial amount of geo bonds to pay for our local match for that $21 million. Okay, and we figure that all into our long-range forecasting for debt service. We've got that built in. But that's kind of a new addition, but certainly a good match for the amount of money we're getting from the federal and state that Damien's going to get us will offset a lot of what we would have had to pay for locally. But it's a little bit new to show the geo bonds there. Sorry, you're right.
no, that's great. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. That's significant, the 17 million out of the 21.
So what will happen to the airport traffic when the runway is being redone, and then also in the entrance into the airport when you're doing the paving? Can you comment on that?
Sure. Damien, when 119 is reconstructed, do you know how that'll be phased?
Yeah.
I want to come up.
Essentially, it's north half. It's essentially north half, south half. Those limits haven't been defined because the study will determine where that break is. And then the coordination with the FAA also is how we split that up operationally. But there would be, you'd have to close it down, or you'd at a minimum have a displaced threshold. You could also use that 1331 crosswind runway. Would stay open pretty much the entire time. The only time we're concerned about is that runway intersection.
Mm-hmm.
Once we're in that, the airport will be closed. There's nothing you can do about it at that point. So making sure that we're outside of our busy times for like football, it would be critical. So scheduling is going to be tough, but the FAA is doing a really good thing for our community because that's all discretionary money. So they're kind of, for lack of a better word, they're fighting for us to get that money because of the amount of traffic our airport sees.
That's right.
I think that's really positive.
Do you have any idea on time, how long that would be shut down?
Typically, a closure like that, you try to keep around 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. It's just paving. That's the one good thing. It's just paving.
You're still tearing it up and putting new in though, right?
Yes, this is full reconstruction. What's there now can't take the weight of the planes we see, like the size of jets. It's only about 38,000 pounds is the maximum. this project hopefully will get us to 100,000.
Oh.
Mm.
And how about the street access? Is there going to be an alternative way to get into the terminal area when you're doing the parking lot and that other street improvement? Or is it
Yes.
just one lane at a time or what?
No, that we'll have to break that loop up into different phases to try and maintain access. But you can go in between the T hangars for a time being to get around the west side of the terminal area.
So off of Airport Road to the site, you'll be able to get in an alternative access in?
There may be a time where you have to come in right off the street, take a right, and then go around. But we'll work with the FBO. We'll get signage up.
It's
Make
just,
sure that the public knows where they need to go.
it's just, there's a lot of traffic out there. I mean, a lot of more and more jets are flying in and there's a lot of people out there. It's just really exciting and just got a great FBO and just knowing that you'll be communicating, explaining that in advance, but it's going to impinge a little bit on some of the traffic and the use of the airport, but that's all. It's a great improvement.
We need a new picture since the airport has a new name.
Yes. Yeah, we'll get that in the next.
John, one more small question. So the railroad crossing on 24th, that project was delayed. Is that planning on being done next summer? You know?
Yeah, that'll pick up once construction season starts this year.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Parks and Rec?
No, transit.
No,
I'm
Barb.
jumping ahead here.
Yeah.
I'm in a hurry. Oh, Barb, are you here?
Yeah.
I thought you left.
I'll do Parks and Rec.
It's
Sorry,
the total
Barb.
city
I
perspective.
thought Parks came before transit.
If Keith wants to.
No, just kidding. I'll sit down for another quarter. If you're ready.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Mayor and Council. Before I get started tonight, I do want to introduce the people I have with me. So I have Christine Crippen, Assistant Director of Operations, Rob Jennings, our Administrative Analyst, and then James Rendell, Assistant Director of Fleet and Facilities. Excuse me. So the SIRIDE portion of the CIP starts on page 103, and it was approved by the Transit Board in their December board meeting. So as we develop the CIP, we kind of take a conservative approach to make sure we have adequate funding. The CIP outlined here, I think, supports SIRIDE's goal of connecting people to the community with safe and efficient transportation. And I think it also supports the goal of reducing carbon emissions and making it a sustainable community in which to live. So implementation of our portion of the CIP is very dependent on state, federal, and local funding. We prioritize our projects, putting the greatest emphasis on vehicle replacement and rehabilitation, and then building improvements and expansion. So obviously maintaining our fleet is really essential to our success. It aligns with one of our core priorities of keeping our equipment in a state of good repair. It also aligns with safety. Keeping our equipment in a state of good repair is a federal requirement for us. And upgrading our facilities really supports the overall quality of life goal. We make improvements that better the air quality within the facility or help with sustainability. So these two areas in the CIP account for about $18.5 million, or about 92% of our capital plan. I will point out, when I walk through the capital plan, you will notice that next year we have fewer projects programmed because we weren't as successful getting grant funding and kind of the timing of that. So, excuse me. So vehicle replacement starts on page 104. Over the next 5 years, we have programmed the replacement of 22 large vehicles. Continuing our commitment to sustainability, we continue to focus on integrating battery electric buses into our fleet. Our first 2 battery electric buses went into service in July. Council just recently awarded 5 additional battery electric buses that we anticipate will be delivered probably within the next 24 months. Here's a nice picture of one of them. We have also programmed in the CIP 3 additional battery electric buses, 1 each year in 26, 27, and then in 28. That would bring our battery electric bus fleet to 10. In addition to the battery electric buses, we've also programmed the replacement of 19 40-foot buses with newer vehicles. Those vehicles are more efficient, less expensive to operate, and have cleaner emissions. We anticipate the cost of vehicle replacement over the next 5 years will be about $15.1 million, with about 80% of that paid with federal funding. In FY25, we received grant funding to replace one 40-foot bus. That is at 85% federal funding. We also have programmed in the CIP the replacement of one SIRIDE support vehicle in FY25 that is currently programmed to be a hybrid vehicle. We continue to evaluate moving forward with an all-electric vehicle as funding becomes available for that. SIRIDE building and expansion is on page 105, and that accounts for about three. Yeah, go ahead. I'm
Quick
sorry.
question. Actually talked about this last week, and that is Robin indicated that you're looking at going to 100% biofuel by using the Optimus system. Can you comment? Is that included in the rehabilitation portion of your budget?
No.
Okay.
That's an excellent question. Yes, we are going to do a pilot project with Optimus Prime and REG, and James can probably speak a little bit better to this, but it's going to be 5 of our vehicles. Optimus was just recently out with their engineers to kind of look at the equipment. I know the fuel tank is ordered. The plan is to roll that out in the summer. I can't remember the exact cost of it, but we were able to just take it out of our local operating budget. I can find out the exact cost.
I know
if you
that-
want. But it's not included in this because we're actually doing it. The board's already approved it.
Because the fleet, I think now that we're buying new dump trucks, they're actually already including that system in it when they specify it. So I was just curious. It'd be interesting to hear how that goes because it's been
Yeah.
really successful for.
Yeah, we're excited to learn more about it. I think I think it could open up opportunities at a minimum. I think it's a good stepping stone to more sustainability, especially as you guys know, the expense with battery electric buses. This would be a nice way to move towards sustainability, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Barbara, are we retiring any buses?
Yes. So none of the buses that I put there are expansion buses. They're all replacement buses. So typically what we do is we replace the oldest vehicle that we have at that time. Now we do look at the condition of the vehicle. Sometimes, believe it or not, the oldest vehicle isn't in the worst condition. So James will kind of make a determination at that time. But we apply for a grant. We usually have to say that we'd be retiring this bus, and this bus.
And do we sell them to someone else? What do we do with those retired buses?
Have you been tailgating? No.
Oh, that explains a lot.
James, do you want to speak about how we do sell them?
Sure.
You sit next to Chris.
Most commonly for disposed of vehicles is through competitive auction site. Most of our vehicles do that way. Now, there's an exception to that. We were successful in receiving Volkswagen emissions scandal money to cover the local costs of some of our most recent bus purchases. Those had to be disabled in a way they can never be put back on the road. So we actually took them to the scrapyard to dispose of them, but typically through a competitive auction site. So.
And they're typically sold for under $5,000, right?
Yep.
If they're sold for more than $5,000, you do have to pay back the federal share of that.
Oh, interesting.
So they might be used for tailgating.
Yes. Okay, then facility improvements and expansion is on page 105. That accounts for about $3.4 million over the next 5 years. And typically we have one major construction project planned each year. These projects are usually receive partial funding through a state of Iowa grant, which is called a PTA grant, Public Transit Infrastructure Grant. However, in FY25, we were not awarded a PTIG grant. We will be resubmitting that project in a future year. So this next year, we'll just focus on some smaller scale projects. You can see here, we'll keep that facility in that state of good repair like I talked about. So we have $30,000 programmed for concrete repairs around the facility, and then $50,000 for A&E services, on-call architect and engineering. In FY26, we have budgeted funds for a fire suppression system to help mitigate fire risk with battery electric buses within the facility. And again, we would pursue grant funding for that project as well. FY27, we have a fueling system upgrade programmed. So this would replace our current fueling system. This new system would allow for spill-free fueling. It would be quicker, have less waste, and be more environmentally sustainable. And again, we would pursue grant funding for this as well. And then we have facility expansion programmed into FY28 and 29. We programmed $750,000 into the CIP to expand as grant opportunities become available. Currently, SIRIDE has $3.7 million in local match for a future facility improvements or expansion. Questions about that before I move on to technology? Okay, so transit technology is on page 106. We'll continue to invest in bus technology that improves system efficiencies and the rider experience so we can deliver the services that the community depends on. In FY25, we have budgeted $50,000 to develop passenger-facing information to really help enhance the rider experience and allow passengers to more easily use our services. We'll also focus on data collection, which will allow us to evaluate our bus systems efficiencies and really measure the performance of the battery electric buses for us in Ames. We will continue to further integrate technology by adding additional infotainment bus monitors on our vehicles. So that's what's pictured here. These monitors use real-time data to show upcoming stops and transfer points along the route. This information helps passengers new to the system and assists with accessibility and ease of access. These can also be used to display advertising materials, so it could be a revenue source for SIRIDE. And they are federally funded at 80%. Shop and office equipment is on page 107. We program funding each year for the replacement of office and computer equipment as well as shop equipment. The maintenance department uses very specialized pieces of equipment, so it's difficult to always know what we're going to have to replace each year. So we program between $45,000 and $50,000 every year for shop equipment. So the piece of equipment I have here will be replaced in 25. This is our fluid reels. They're in the maintenance facility. We have 37 of them, and they have reached their useful life. So we're working on replacing those. In FY25, we've also programmed the replacement of our current steam cleaning hoist, which you can kind of see here. It's hard to see, but the bus is up in the air. This equipment is used to maintain the heavy-duty vehicles. It's reached its useful life. It also does not accommodate an articulated bus, so the 60-foot buses. We've also programmed funding for a tire balancer. We currently don't own this piece of equipment, so investing in a tire balancer will increase the life of our tires and then provide a better ride for our passengers. And then in 25, we've also included funding for the installation of auxiliary heaters on our bus. So these heaters are used to help heat the passenger compartments and the engines during extremely cold weather like you've experienced now. So they are all running.
That was added this last week, right?
Yeah. And then the next portion of the CIP for us is bus stop improvements on page 108. We program funding each year for shelters, benches, and pads. And as we update our bus stop improvement plan, we do continue to use our automatic passenger counter so that we can enhance amenities for the greatest number of passengers. We also added additional funding each year for small concrete projects.
How many benches do we have? Would this budget add? How many stops don't have one, I guess, too? Do you just a ballpark? I know you don't have to have the exact numbers on you.
Do you know how many shelters you have? How many, well, how about shelters?
Not in benches even.
Not sure of the number of benches in our system. We currently have approximately 48 shelters in our system spread throughout the city. We don't have a whole lot of very many benches just because of the size requirements to placing them properly in a safe location for passengers.
Sure. Yeah.
So if I had to take a guess, we have somewhere around 5 to 10 benches around the city. different spots, and then total number of stops is somewhere in the neighborhood of 400.
450 or something like that. And we try to put shelters where in large areas, right? And as benches, it's hard because they're not always covered, and people. So, and then they're on people's property. So if somebody wants a bench, we have had people request benches, and then usually we're able to get them one.
Interesting.
As far as, I think you asked how much is in here, bus shelter is extremely expensive. The new bus shelters cost about $35,000 a piece. So we do get federal funding to help pay for that. So this only allows us to upgrade about 2 bus shelters a year. Because shelters are in huge demand, what we typically do is we take what I call the old style shelters, and we see if we can place them someplace else so that we can continue to have more amenities at locations. Those shelters are probably 35 years old. Amazingly, the brown ones that you see.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah. That concludes the transit portion.
Any questions? Other questions?
If not, I want to point out page 103. Page 103. The CIP is prepared by Barb and the staff. We're talking about expenditures of $20 million, and they do an excellent job, again, of securing federal and state grants, about $14 million. So about 71% is paid for federal and state grants. And I want to keep pointing this out because I know you're concerned, and so are we, that we're doing as much as we can to leverage other dollars, non-tax-paying dollars. And I can tell you this, the departments, and we'll give you a full report on this from all departments, are working hard to secure grants whenever possible to help relieve the burden on our local taxpayer. But the Cyber does a very good job every year.
Thank you. And I will say 71% is a little lower than we typically get. Part of that is just, you've heard other people say, supply chain issues, cost of inflation. So a lot of the grants that we've received them in prior years.
Yes.
So it's like a FY20 grant. So bus was this price, it continues to increase. But typically you will see SIRIDE grants at between 80 and 85%.
But you're able to leverage grants for operating.
Yes, and we have
budgets, which
started
most
doing that.
departments can't.
Yes,
So you'll see some of it was a shift in operations.
correct.
Which again relieves the burden of the 3 supporting agencies. So it's very unusual we get federal grants for operations, but you do that too. So you put the total together, it's
Yes,
even more impressive.
thank you.
Pretty good on purpose.
I can't take credit for all that, but thank you.
No, staff does a good job on
They
it.
do an excellent job. Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Parks and Rec. Does that come after T? I think so.
I know, alphabetic.
Finally, Parks and Rec. Good.
And now the time you've all been waiting for. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So we'll go through CIP, just going to highlight, there's a lot of projects there, just going to highlight a few things before we get started. This is, like to thank all of our staff, especially Courtney and Joshua. I gave them the night off, so they're not here. But do want to thank them for all their work with putting, CIP budget together, managing all the projects, and also to our staff, our managers, our park staff who do a lot of the work and help with managing some of the projects as well. So you'll see with this year, our 5-year CIP, just approximately $28 million. 22 of that is with the Fitch Family Indoor Aquatic Center. Comes out to roughly about $900,000 for all of our other projects for each year. One of the things too is a lot of these projects we have delayed this year. We haven't moved them up. There's a couple of things, and I'll touch on that as we go for this 24-25 year. But with this, all right. So with the Fitch Family Indoor Aquatic Center, we've been to council a few times over the last month or so with plans and specifications and some follow-up questions. We will be coming next week, Tuesday, with reporting bids. We'll say that they came in very favorable There's still a couple of items that we need to kind of work through. Hopefully we'll have those worked through prior to next Tuesday and then share all the that information. But we'll just say with it looks like we should be able to do the base bid and all the alternates if that's what council so chooses. So just a little precursor to next week, Tuesday, but just give you a little bit of that information. Again, the building base bid was to the left of that line. Add alternate one was to the right. And again, bids are looking pretty good. With this is just, again, shows the overall project, total of 32.1 million. Kind of spreads it out, started spending money in 2021 and, hopefully we'll be finished in 25, 26, with the opening in the fall. I'm not going to go through all of this detail unless there are specific questions. When we get to page 117 with park system improvements, there's a lot of things. One project that we did move up was the community center gym floor, replacement. We do for a long time, it's been operational for over 30 years, and we have done a refinish every year. Over the last several years, we took that out. We've been doing it every other year, which has been doing pretty well. But the picture to the right is, something we have seen some cupping. The boards themselves are tongue and groove. So out in the middle of the floor, what happens is they kind of start cupping kind of where that tongue and groove is put together. So what we were looking at doing is just doing a complete sanding of it and trying to get it, again, a smooth surface. But a couple of things that are happening, that picture on the right is along that west wall where we have some boards you can kind of see that have really come up. And we're going to have to take a further dive, into that and see if there are some moisture issues, other things that might be happening along the wall, and we'll take care of all that at the same time.
Keith, the CIP 117 says refinish, and you have replace. Which is it?
It is going to be a sand and a refinish. So we will have to replace some boards throughout, but it's more of a sand and refinish.
Thank you.
Hey, so one of the things I want to really kind of go through is we are going to be doing some parking along 13th Street where our soccer fields are. And one of the things that we're looking at is, these pictures are from the Iowa State Fairgrounds. And what they have done is they've done this project, and this is something similar that we're looking into doing for parking. So what they do is they put this grid of recycled plastic and so on is how that grid is made. Lay that down, fill it with sand, and then put seed in there, and it winds up looking like it does on the right. But what happens is you can park vehicles on there, and this material is you can almost put just about any vehicle that we would have could drive on that surface. So it's something that it's permeable. It looks good when you aren't having cars parked there. So it's something that we're exploring, and we're hoping that we'll be able to give this a try or something similar to it in that situation. Another park system improvement later on, we do have the canoe accesses on the Skunk River at North River Valley Park and South 16th Street. I know Steve and Barb were just talking about grant opportunities. This is one of the projects that through the DNR, they do have grant opportunities for this. So we have $50,000 for each project, and half of that would be through, we're anticipating getting grants through the DNR for these two accesses. We moved on, splash pad. We're just at council recently with this too, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time. But this is just a rendering of what this splash pad we're anticipating it would look like. The one thing that we'll have to say is that we will have this program to cycle through all of the different features. So the water will not all be on at the same time. It'll cycle through. Some will be on, some will be off, and so on. But this is what that will look like. We did have money that we have accumulated over the years. And then 24, 25 does have kind of the balance to finish off this project.
Remember, there was extra cost for the recirculation, and then we added the 24, 25 to make up that difference. So now we have the amount to match the new higher estimated cost for the recirculation system, the decision direction you gave us. So that's in there.
Yeah. We'll go on to playground, replacements. And we've, mentioned this last year. When we do more Memorial Park, we want to really try to use the terrain and do something fun and different. But with this page, number 119, does have 13 replacements at various parks. And again, what we try to do, we get about roughly 20 years out of each of our playgrounds. Some get replaced a little sooner, some get replaced a little later, depending on use and the wear and tear. One of the things that you'll see new on this page is Miracle Park surfacing. So this rubber surface has a lifespan of roughly 10 years, give or take, again with use and everything. So we did program into year 5 to start replacing some of these sections. And if you remember when we designed this, as you can see, we have the different sections, Spinner Squall, Swing Alley, Sliders Canyon, and so on. We kind of separated those. So when we do have to replace the rubber surfacing, we can replace one at a time. We don't have to replace them all at the same time. So that way we can spread that cost out over multiple years. And we will be looking too, as we go, we may be able to even, like say in Swing Alley, where under the swings where there might be more wear and tear, if the rest of it is in good shape, maybe we can cut out a section and just replace under the swing. So that could save us potentially some costs as well. But those are things, but we do need to start thinking, did open in 2020. So, we're kind of getting to that point at the end of this 5-year plan that we may need to look at replacing some of those sections.
Keith, is the baseball field the same kind of material?
It is a rubber surface, but so where all the playground stuff is, because of you needing that impact attenuation, what it is there's a thicker, softer rubber, and then on top of it is a thinner, maybe 1/4 inch harder surface for the wear and tear. Okay, that's under all the playground areas. On the baseball field, you just take all that cushiony stuff and you're left with that harder top surface because it's easier for the mobility devices and so on. So it's just that top portion. It's still a rubber surface, but it's a different makeup.
I didn't ask a good question. So are you gonna have to replace the softball field also within the next 5 to 10 years is the wear more pronounced under the equipment than it is in the ball field itself?
Yeah, we're thinking we might get a little bit more life out of maybe more in the around 12 years or so out of the baseball, softball field. So the playground is getting a lot more use, and some of those areas will wear a lot quicker. So we're hoping the baseball field will get more years out of it before we have to replace it.
And that'll be a lot more substantial cost too.
It will be.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so ADA transition plan improvements, putting $100,000 in each year. And And we are, replacing, when we replace some of our drinking fountains, we replace them with ADA compliant. Just, we did not get a picture, but one of the things that we did at Brookside Park, we did line some accessible parking spots. We didn't have any there. Actually had an individual contact us about it, and we said, yep, we'll get it taken care of. We did that, this fall. And then, so some of the things we're using the money out of this fund, some accessibility things we're doing just as part of other projects. So if you look at the right, picture on the right, we did some renovation of the Country Gable shelter. We put a metal roof on it. We added some concrete. So we added an ADA compliant grill along with a regular grill, some trash cans, and then we added the path from the path through the park, to the shelter. Before, you had to go over the grass to get to it. So again, just showing the pictures, sometimes will be part of the project that will take care of some of the issues that we have. And then other times we'll use the money that's in this fund to resolve some of those issues. Ada Hayden, and we'll be doing, this. There is money, $700,000 through GEO bonds in the 2 years, 24, 25, and 25, 26. And what we're going to be doing is we'll really probably start this project late spring, early summer of 25, and finish it late summer, maybe early fall of 25. What we're trying to do is the money is over 2 fiscal years. We'll start in 1 fiscal year, finish in the 2nd fiscal year. But what we can do is we think if we do this, we can mobilize once, save on some mobilization fees and some other things. We have heard some concerns about the impact to the park. So coming up here, well, it'll be, not until fall of 24, most likely. What we'll do is have some public input sessions, some educational sessions, just to let people know what we're doing and try to address any concerns that people have with the project. The other project for Ada Hayden is a pond renovation on the north end of the park. You can see the picture that's kind of looking from west to east on the left, and then more of an aerial view. You have the rotary overlook. From this past fall. We have an individual, I'll give him some credit, Kevin Buck, goes out into the parks a lot with his grandchildren, takes a lot of pictures, and throughout this presentation and we do the budget presentation, I do use a lot of his pictures because they are very good. So Moore Memorial Park, again, with the bridge. And putting this, and I'll just go to the next slide also, and you can see where the bridge is going to be, and then, all the way up to Shoal Road. We have been working with the university. We do have a draft agreement that for easements, to get this project accomplished over the years, and legal is looking at that agreement right now. We'll probably bring that to council in February. We really want to get the easement, that agreement done. Right now, we asked for a 50-year term, and what they have done is they've given us, right now, the way it's worded, is that it will be good forever as long as we use the easements for a trail. So as long as we have it for a trail, it'll be beyond the 50 years. So one of the things that we'll mention also is right now the university is going to be doing some work on Shoal Road. When we did our CIP input in the fall for Parks and Recreation, there were a lot of comments about Shoal Road and this project. So they're going to be doing some work on Shoal Road from Ontario to the railroad tracks, but then they're also going to start putting in a shared use path on the west side of Shoal Road And I believe they're at least going to go to the railroad tracks, maybe little bit further. And then eventually they'll get it all the way out to applied sciences. So that will really help us and reduce our cost when we come from the bridge all the way up to where they have their shared use path. So that's a good thing. This also is one for the bridge. We have in the past received grants, REAP grant funding for bridge in the park system. So that is a change in the CIP this year. We had $300,000 out of local option sales tax. Now we're showing $150,000 out of local option sales tax and $150,000 through grant funding. So we feel pretty good about getting that money as well.
And Keith, I'm sorry, the bridge will be what year?
I believe it's 25, 26.
Okay.
26, 27.
Oh, 26, 27.
That's what you show on the on page
Yep.
123.
Engineering starts 25.
Yeah.
And is there a discussion about signage?
As far as
Well, I mean, as you're going along Ontario, there's no signage now that
Yep.
there is even a park there. And so it would just be amazing if there was some way to provide some signage to alert people.
Eventually, once we get the it all complete, we will put signage.
Okay.
We can do signage because right now, when we put the bridge in, that little white section kind of from Moore Memorial Park, you see through Vinker, Public Works does have that section in their plan. So we'll do that, and then we'll just mow a path on the west side of the river to the area where we did plant prairie in that 40 acres on the west side of the river this past year. So that'll continue to develop, and then we'll be mowing paths through there. So we can do signage to let people know once that is to get to that area. Right now, there's really not a good way to get there. You can walk along Shoal Road to get down there, but I think we'll probably wait until we get it a more developed trail. But we can do some signage and let people know that it's there.
I think I was in Ames for 20 years before I knew about Peggy's Trail and Reactor Woods. 20 years.
Yeah.
And this is one of my favorite places in Ames. And so I think that this trail is going to open up so many people to experience this area. So I'm thrilled. And it would be premature to talk about potential relationships, but as people see the value of Peggy's Trail and what a great resource this is, I think there will be some greater interest in seeing some partnerships with the university with respect to Peggy's Trail and Reactor Woods.
Yeah. And then and we've talked about that before. Right now, we just don't have the capacity to take care of that.
Right.
But in the future, that may be something that we would be able to do.
But just the trails alone is going to be huge.
Yeah.
Keith, is there another way for you to access equipment to get from Moore Memorial Park to the prairie area without going across that bridge? Or will that bridge be designed to handle the equipment that you would need to get across?
Yeah, so the bridge will be designed to handle equipment, mowers. This will be a path. Once it's all hard surface, it'll be a path that we will plow, in the wintertime, because it'll be a nice connection. Part of the agreement with the university for the easements is that we would rate the bridge so they can take some of their equipment over that as well. So it'll be a nice win-win for all of us.
It's called pedestrian, so people aren't going to start driving their pickup trucks and other things across it, right?
No, we've talked about doing some things to prevent that from happening. Okay. So we go to Homewood, with this, replacing this bridge. We are looking at some different options. We've had a consultant out and talk about it, and about maybe doing a metal bridge that we have done in some of our other parks. We actually have talked about, would it be possible to maybe do some type of a land bridge in there as well? So we're looking at those, different options. We'll say for design, again, our Homewood operational fund is very healthy right now. And we did take the $75,000 for design of this bridge out of the Homewood operational fund. And we'll talk more about that in the.
Speaking of the ravine study, Anita, I think you observed or maybe it was Brown, observed on the backside of the golf clubhouse.
That was me.
Gloria,
Yeah.
seems like there's erosion on the east side of the golf clubhouse.
Yep.
And I'm sure you're probably aware of it. Is that something which is need to be attended to? Because it seems like it's getting pretty close to the foundation, or maybe that's all stabilized, not a problem.
Yeah, and when we had the consultant out, they looked at it. They weren't too concerned with it, but we have asked them to do some additional inspection and really to give us a good idea of what we need to do. So yeah, there is there may be some things that we have to do even with the downspouts to get the water going to the bottom of the ravine, so it's not creating some more of that erosion or so on. But they were not too concerned about it.
Okay.
But very good observation.
I don't like heights, so the closer a ravine is, the less I like it.
Yeah. And then the last one with the Furman Aquatic Center, we will be we do have funding in the plan for replacing the light fixtures to a longer life LED, which will help us out there as well. So with that, any questions or any other questions about the Parks and Recreation?
I just have one quick question, and I don't think it's in here because it was in a prior CIP.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if we've already programmed in the agility course and the mini pitch for this year.
Yeah. So it's in the current year for the
Okay.
restroom and shelter, and actually we have a site plan, for it.
Yep.
And we just met with the consultant 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Just to kind of make some final changes to it, and we're talking about with the restroom, which way to go. But we're really hoping that we can get some of this out to bid
Okay.
this spring,
Okay.
and get the equipment ordered, and then hopefully by the end of fall it would be in.
Okay.
So actually, there's three projects, right? Splash pad.
Well, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pitch, mini pitch, and also the
Agility course.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
want to explain, because I don't know if we explained the concept we have now with the mini pitch. The
Yeah.
partnership we're talking about. I
Yeah.
remember last time we talked to the council of the whole that we were going to build it all. Did we figure out
Yeah.
our new strategy on that? I don't remember.
Yeah. So there's and we're looking to bring this agreement to council in February, but there's a, group, Kick It Forward is what they're called. And in a number of communities, they will go in, they will fundraise, money, and then get the project built. Because of the cost and with public improvement, laws, and we are putting money in, we've set aside $150,000 to it. So we will need to lead the project. So what we're probably going to do is we will serve as our own GC, but we are going to have a contract, an agreement with Kick It Forward to do the fundraising. So we'll put in 150,000. We'll have get a design, get a cost estimate, and then they will fundraise for the remaining portion of that money, which could be roughly $150,000. They will raise the money, they will give it to the city, we'll put it in a donation account, and then we'll use that money to finish off the project. We won't do any work until they raise the funds necessary to finish off the project.
And our money's going basically for the the pad?
It'll be pad, electric. There's some other things with that as well. But we'll give you more of a rundown of all of that in more detail when we bring the agreement in
Because of the
February.
partnership, we may be able to get 2 of these, right?
Yeah, our plan is to do 2 fields lighted up at Lloyd Kurtz Park. We actually will be also, one of the things that we're going to be doing before we bring this to you, we will be hosting a public input session up at Stonebrook Church, and we'll be getting information out to the Lloyd Kurtz neighborhood, as well as the entire community, if anybody wants to come and provide input.
And as you know, there's no parking lot up there, so Keith's working with the church with the agreement that we can use the visitors to the park to use that, their parking lot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna finish that agreement off.
So are we gonna build one mini pitch and then wait for them to raise the money to build a second one?
No, we're going to do it all at the same time.
They said they could raise for 2.
I mean, a mini pitch only costs $110,000, and then the money to pour the concrete portion. So for one.
No. Yeah. So it makes more sense to do them all at the same time rather than, because we'll pour the concrete, one large pad, they'll come in, they'll do the fencing, do the lighting. Again, it'd be cheaper to do it all at one time rather.
So
than
how
do
much
one.
are we contributing to the project?
We have 150.
Okay.
So we're thinking, and with depending on, there's 3 different sizes of
Yeah.
fields. We're looking at kind of that medium, size field, but their estimate, what they gave us was $200,000 for the 2 fields, and then whatever it is for the pad, the electric, bringing the utilities to that area. We will probably have to do a little bit of maybe some grading to make sure that any water does not flow to the parking lot. That's something that we've talked with Stonebrook Church about. So
Keith, would we put 2 of these fields at the same park?
yes.
So just brainstorming, I don't want to overstep my bounds, but would there be a possibility of putting one, I don't know, Southdale, tons of kids down there. So just putting these in different parts of the city.
Yeah, we can look at that. That's not what we have been discussing. We've been talking about putting them at the same. Well, it also, if somebody wants to, because we've had conversation with the soccer club, they'll be a user of this. If they want to do some type of a tournament or something along those lines, 2 fields in the same location are better than fields in separate locations. And we'll be able to, I think, would save some cost also by having them in the same location.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the same reason we have tennis courts in different parts of the community. We have parks in different parts of the community. I mean, maybe we see how this goes with this one and see if there's some, gauge the level of interest. But I'm trying to think about pockets where we have large numbers of families, and that Southdale area comes to my mind as being an area where there could be a lot of interest, or maybe even partnering with the schools. What if we put it, actually, Kate Mitchell's got a very large playground area. Maybe put one on the Kate Mitchell playground and be an opportunity for us to partner with the schools.
And that's typically what Kick It Forward does is either put them at schools or in low-income neighborhoods to provide access to.
This is just brainstorming, but I love the ideas of ways we can partner with our schools, be a great addition for the amenities of Kate Mitchell.
Just so you understand, it's my understanding that the group Kick It Forward believes they can raise the 200,000, but just so you know, they don't do it themselves. They go out and they sell advertising. So there'll be advertising on these facilities.
Yeah.
Just like we have at the ice arena.
Yeah.
So that's why they're pretty confident they can raise the funds for it.
Yeah, and it's a little different. It's more of if they get a large donor, we would put, and there'll be in the agreement that you'll see there's a term, to how long this whether it's a sign on the side or a logo on the surface, how long that will be. So it'll take all these questions, and when we come back in February, we'll give you a deeper dive into all of this.
So how long will it take for them to raise the money?
They said it could take 6 to 9 months.
So the point is that if council wants to see this done this year, that's not going to happen for the soccer pitch. It'll be next year then.
It depends on if they're, at 6 months, we could maybe be able to get something, done yet in the fall. Like this year with as nice as the weather was through December, we could get something accomplished. It depends on how quick they're able to fund or to raise it. And yeah, it could be this fall. It could be next spring.
Well, it's just, I think from my conversation with the council, there's an interest in getting projects done. I think the agility course and the soccer pitch are two things that we'd like to see get done, this calendar year. So I was just curious. This is a new wrinkle. It's interesting to try and help you defer the cost, but I guess it's a conversation that council can
We
have.
could certainly drop that idea of party with them, and we can just build the one that we have money for. That's fine. I think we're encouraged by the soccer people to work with Kick It Forward, but maybe I'm wrong, to get two. Maybe
Well, I think it'd be good for taking under advisement and then give some, more direction.
Yeah,
I just think that there's just one of the things that is really important for the community are amenities, and we have a great park system, so I'm not discounting it at all.
Yeah.
But I'm just we just really like to see a
Okay, we need some direction, so think about that. We need direction, because we can drop that concept and go back to just building
the agility.
our own building ones.
The agility course, that's on schedule to be built and cutting the ribbon this year then too, or this calendar year.
That's what we're hoping for the agility course. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So if you would like, when we come in February, we can bring those two options.
Yeah.
Either the agreement or just do one field on our own. We'll get some, make sure that we get the costs and everything. So, but we'll bring that all to you.
The third option would be is if the council went ahead and said, well, we'll front the money, but would like to see Kick It Forward do some fundraising. I know it's like paying for a dead horse. It doesn't go very well. But the point is that I just, anyway, maybe it's the advertising component that helps defer or some of that. Anyway, you can bring it forward and council make the decision. So, good. Anything else? Any questions?
And the last thing then is just the cemetery. We have, fencing out at Ontario Fencing. It's a picture on the left. The picture on the right is the fencing that we have at Ames Municipal Cemetery. So get them to match. And then when we did the pavilion and everything at the cemetery, Ames Municipal Cemetery, we do have 3, columbaria there already. Just a little fact, it took us 20 years from the time we sold the first niche to the time we sold the last niche in the first columbaria. Right now in the second one, in just over 2 years, that is over 2/3 full. And then we have, the third one. So that's why we're putting in for, 3 more to get them in. And that should then last us for a while, but we are selling a lot of them. So any questions on the cemetery?
I have one more question on not on the cemetery, but on the fencing around the tennis courts, just adjacent to the Miracle Park field. Is that Innis Grove? Is that right?
Yes, Innis Grove.
Is that program for this year to be replaced and pickleball, or what's going on with that?
No, so what we have done is we actually took money that we took that project out. And we were going to do it, but then the surfacing was in bad shape. So we used some of that money to get the surfacing done. We did not reprogram that at this time. We will want to do it, but we also want to may do it at the same time as we redo the basketball court on the south end of it, of the tennis courts. So right now it's not programmed in, because at some point we do think we may have to do the entire. We just did a resurfacing right now. We'll see how long. We had to do it sooner than we had to, that we thought we would need to do it. So we wanted to wait, and if we do experience cracking again, we will probably have to do a complete reconstruction of those courts, and then we would do everything at that same time. So yeah, it does need to, it doesn't look as nice as the fencing around the Miracle League field and so on.
Miracle Park is an amazing
Yes.
facility and just looks awesome. And then you go by the fencing of the tennis courts, and it's just like,
Yeah.
and so I know you mentioned that. I forget about the resurfacing. We're just thinking about, long term in terms of how it looks and
Yep.
serviceability, and obviously as you know, pickleball's picked up so much as well too. Just
Right.
anyway. So
Yep.
all right, good. Thanks.
Very good. Anything else?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Okay.
good night.
Thanks, Keith.
Gotta keep going now.
Page 127, I'll just go over the library. If you look on page 127, one thing I want to point out to you is that's an example. The project is now listed at $303,000. This is a replacement of the carpeting. That's a major undertaking. It's not just carpeting. You have to lift and move all those books out of the way. It's a big undertaking. Last year at this time, we had the project listed for over 2 years. Remember the second and first floor for $147,000. We've got, I think, our latest indication is just moving the first floor is going to go up by $155,000. So we've added to this project it went from $147,000 to $303,000. We added some more money in 23, 24. And again, by the time they go to the second floor on 24, 25, that may have to be adjusted. We don't have any update on that. Just want to point that out. It's not a new project, but there's a cost increase. And then the last three are just the downtown facade program, the campus town facade program, and the neighborhood improvement program, which there are no changes on. In fact, you increase the amount for, I think, the downtown, and also authorize going up from $15,000 to $23,000 per grant on some of these programs. So you didn't see any change in those, right? Okay. Two more things I want to do for you. I know you read my transmittal letter, but go to the last page of the transmittal letter, because I want to emphasize again, the transmittal letter is the beginning of the document. You pull it up. There are 5 projects I've talked about that aren't in the CIP and haven't been, but we mentioned before. And they're not in this CIP, but at this time next year, we're going to have to start prioritizing those, right? So we can layer those in with all the street projects you want, remember? And maybe if we get more aggressive in Pioneer infrastructure, there'll be additional streets added to just repairing streets, right? And then these, because I've listed the 5. They're now, I hope they're in alphabetical order. I messed up on transit and Parks and Rec, but they're in alphabetical order, not in order of importance. I do think in talking through it, I think the staff knows what the 2 top priorities would be. Number 1 would be the animal control shelter. It is an existing building that is not only overcrowded, but probably inadequate for the service we provide. The second one is an existing building, the fire station, which needs to be relocated for 2 purposes. To increase the safety in the campus town area for emergency vehicles coming and going in a compacted area, predominantly students. We're worried about the danger posed by that, but also by relocating that probably on State Street. We're working with Iowa State University for possible sites there. By relocating that, we'll actually improve our response time. And you'll see our response time is falling a little bit below our goal. And you'll see that. Fire Station 4, that's 3rd place, but it's only because alphabetical order. That really can be probably seen as the last priority, because that'll move with the speed in which we develop according to age 2040, right? So I can't tell you it's needed immediately. It'll be sometime in the future. And we're going to look at different options for that. So the next two you're going to have to think about prioritizing, and that's first, the Ontario Park Development Use acquired 50 acres. Now we have it, and I'm sure people are going to get a little bit impatient about, are we going to start developing that park? And then the most recent one I introduced for your consideration is an indoor recreation center. Nothing fancy, but increasing indoor basketball courts, soccer practice fields, a legitimate track so Tim can sprint around the fast, and adding that. And how those two compete against each other, I don't know. The challenge will be all of these will need a bond issue, probably, unless we get 100% donation or we have some cash to pay 100% up for them. And remember, you can't have any special elections. You can only have it one time a year. So you're going to have to decide, are you going to put them all in the first year on a separate ballot for each one? Are we going to spread them out for 5 years? That's why Corey will work his magic. If we thought you wanted to do each one of those, we'll lay that out. Remember, we look ahead 5 years to 10 years on our CIP. All these requests from the general fund, add that on there, and other suggested street projects, new street projects, and we'll see what the impact will be on debt service. The one that causes me the most concern is probably, and I think it's one of the most important, is the indoor recreation center, only because I want to assure you that will not break even. So like an indoor swimming pool, that's going to add to the general levy, put a little bit of stress on us given the restrictions placed on us by the new state legislation. But nonetheless, it's an important project we should consider. Don't get me wrong. So probably throughout the next year, I'm going to have to get you more information on what would the cost be if we took it to a bond issue for a new animal control shelter, a new fire station relocated. The fire station 4, not only is the fire station, but in that case, we'll need new personnel costs and a new $1.2 million, $1.3 million pumper truck too, in addition to the actual facility itself. And maybe a master plan for Ontario Park. A lot of input from the neighbors. It's a community park. See what that costs. I don't know if I have in there a master plan for the indoor recreation center yet. We'll have to talk about that at budget time. If that's a high priority, we might have to add that. Once we get that information, we'll know capital costs, operating costs. I'm maybe conservatively saying those 5 could cost anywhere between $36 to $40 million. That's a lot of improvement, though, considering the swimming pool was $31 million just for one pool, but still significant addition to our debt service we have to talk about. It's not in there now. I don't want to put it in there now. I want to have information available to you so you can make wise decisions next year when we put the CIP together. Anybody have any questions about that? Do you understand what I'm saying about this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The last thing I want to go over with Corey, and I want to remind you all about debt capacity, the requirements from the state and your own internal requirements, what the CIP leaves you with.
So one of the pages that's also in the your CIP books is this projection of debt capacity, and the state limits the city's total debt capacity to 5% of actual valuation. So I believe this slide has been shown over several years. We'll just run through it really quickly here. You can see my mouse there that's moving very slow. So this is the fiscal year that we're going into, and that shows a significant increase in actual valuations compared to last year. That's not taxable, so all the rollback and all those other exemptions will be a different number, but that's not in this calculation. So this is just total valuations. The item below that is the state mandated debt limit, so that's 5% of the total actual valuation. That's the maximum amount of debt that we'd be able to issue. The 82 million just below that number, that is what the city has a policy for reserve. So the city policy reserves 25% of our capacity for emergencies of things of that nature. The section down below, this $58 million, that's the amount of outstanding debt that we have projected currently. So we've issued 58 million. That's what we have left of the outstanding debt issuances. The next row of numbers, this is debt associated with each year of the CIP. So you go through all the CIP funding sources, and next year we're saying that we anticipate issuing $18.5 million in debt, and then that carries out the 5-year CIP. So those numbers should match what we have as our funding sources in our CIP. We have payments. Obviously, we make interest and principal payments on our new debt, so we're taking those numbers out and accruing the increased debt amount each year. So what we're saying at this point is at the end of 2025, the city would have $76 million of debt outstanding, which means that we have $169 million of unreserved debt capacity. So that's about 68% of what we say that our debt capacity is, less the 25%, excuse me. And that leaves a total debt capacity. If we take out the reserve part of the city policy, we have $251 million, which is about 76% of our total debt capacity. And then that plays out, of course, over the next 5 years with inclusion of our other issuances for our CIP. I think last year there was a question about how that compares to other cities. So we went ahead and pulled some of that information for context. This is the 10 largest cities in the state of Iowa. You can see we've used at the far right, this is the just an alternate way of looking at it. We've used 23.4% of our debt capacity. So that's the $76 million. And what we're saying is the average city has used 46.87%. So we this is a required publication for the audit. So we went through it and looked for the most recent audits to see what they had out there. So it all varies, of course, by assessed value and what they've issued for debt. But as you can see, we're well below the average, and some of our partner cities are significantly higher.
I've never seen this chart before. This is one of the most interesting charts I have seen in these settings because it gives us a sense of just where we are. And I mean, there's some interesting policy choices. I mean, it sort of demonstrates if we wanted to do more, I mean, we could do more, and trying to figure out what the right sizing that is. But I have never seen that. And I think it's a testimony to the good budgeting that Steve has led for all these decades of, that we're at that spot.
Iowa City's similar to us, and is it Ankeny? They're about 26. So
I've never seen this.
Iowa City and Ankeny. So it's obvious we have the capacity. We've always reserved it for you. Now, if the more you issue, the more your debt service goes. So you have to be willing to raise property taxes.
Right.
That's the balance.
And that includes both essential corporate purpose and discretionary vote capacity, correct?
Anything that's recuperable through the debt service levy, essentially.
And that excludes, of course, the electric and water and sewer, because those are all through user fees, right?
I wonder if Council Bluffs is so low because they've got a lot of gambling revenue that goes towards public projects there. Just curious, that's really low.
Yeah, I know Cedar Rapids is high because of the issuances they have with derecho and some of the flooding. They issue a lot of debt.
And as Corey's warned me, as the state legislation kicks in, it's going to maybe require cities to start borrowing money for things like vehicles that right now we pay for wisely by amortizing through the operating costs. You would take it out of operations. You wouldn't bank that. You would just borrow money to buy all your vehicles. So that'll force us to increase the percentage too. I think that's one of the downsides, the unintended consequences of the state legislature, that it's going to force cities to borrow rather than pay as you go, because it comes out of operations, which comes out of the general levy, and you may have to try to avoid that. So it's kind of interesting. But we've always had plenty of room. It's really the appetite you have for it's raising taxes. That's what it is. So you have a lot of flexibility. It's a policy decision for you. That's good. There are some people with their maximum levy too. Now, that's why their bond ratings might be higher too, right? They could be strapped, have a large debt service, which affects their bond ratings. They might not have this higher rating as us, So then they pay a little bit more for it too, and their taxes are probably higher. Is Des Moines on there? Yeah.
Amazing.
Des Moines is, it'd be interesting, the tax rate, next to that too, right? Des Moines is, I don't know what they are compared to, are they $18 versus 10?
Pretty close.
$18 or $19, and we're at 10 total. So you pay either way, it bumps up in other areas. But you've got the flexibility to do good things if you can prioritize. That's the good news. How much? That's a policy decision up to you all. So we'll layer all that stuff in. And again, there are things like, I don't know what's going to come out of the downtown plan, what they're going to expect you to pay for. Again, I don't know these 5 bond issues, what they'll actually cost. I don't know about the housing study, what you want to get more aggressive in building streets. That's geo bonds. That'll add to that. But we have the flexibility to do it.
Anything else? All
Okay,
right.
I hope that was helpful. It's a lot of projects, a lot of different sources of revenues. This will all get layered into the first year. What I like about this plan, there's reality to it. We've laid it out, Corey and Nancy have analyzed it to me. If it's here for the 5 years, we think based on our projections on operating costs and revenues for the different funds, we'll be able to afford to pay for these. It's not a wish list. It has some reality to it, at least now as we see it. The world can change, as it did on us last year. And we will place those first year projects into the operating budget, you'll see too. So you'll make the final decisions on February, whatever, that Tuesday wrap-up session. If you're thinking about changing anything, we like not to be surprised that last night, in case we have to scramble and figure out what we got to cut back or change. So if you're thinking about something, let us know. Because it takes a lot of work. Nancy always doesn't like to change all the numbers the last day. She yells at me. Any questions? Again, I think we're going to offer input to the public starting next week. We usually do that. Maybe we don't give enough time for them to review the document. It's online. But even if people can't show up next week and they find something out, there's plenty of time to give you input until the wrap-up session in the second week of February. So I don't want to feel that the only time for public input is really next Tuesday, but we open it usually at the next meeting for public input. Any questions you have? Capital improvements plan, 5-year plan. Okay, thank you for your patience.
Thank
Enjoy the
you,
reading.
and-
Good projects there. It'll make, I guarantee you, it's going to improve Ames better than we are today, those investments.
Thanks to you and the staff for all the work. Corey, for your charge. Well, I presume those will probably be in our budget book then, is that right? When it comes out, these two slides.
Yeah, we can put, this one hasn't traditionally been in, but we can put it in.
It'd be
It's
helpful,
been
I think.
our supplemental information.
Yeah.
It's very
Okay.
cool.
All right. All right, we have, Council, you received the email from Leanne Wilson just regarding the climate plan input. I asked Renee just to pass it on or show that, to acknowledge that it was received, but I know that they're taking this into consideration as we're deliberating going forward. So,
I did notice on the website, if you scroll down a bit, and then maybe it's since her email, but there is a in the spotlight section, and it links to the climate action plan on the Landing City's webpage. So maybe
on
ours, yeah. And that was, I think, the second suggestion in her email, I think, about higher visibility on the website. So I just want to say it looks like that maybe has already been
resolved.
Addressed. I don't know if that was since her email or not.
Well, I mean, maybe Steve could just show this to Susan or whoever and just make sure that it is a little more visible. Make sure.
Yeah, it looked like it was right
Good.
on the main page now, anyway.
Good. All right. All right, council comments. Gloria, I'll start with you tonight.
Nothing tonight.
Super exciting meeting. This is one of the most important parts of the year. Great projects. We're a city on the move. There are a lot of cities that are just status quo. They're just trying to keep the lights on. We're doing great projects. Wanted to give kudos to Vanessa Baker Latimer in her leadership with the MLK celebration last night. It was the largest turnout I have ever seen, and I've been going to a few of these. I can't explain it because it was the coldest night in a century, I think, maybe. close to it. Huge turnout, very inspirational. The final thing is, in our discussion of national issues, the federal debt isn't getting a lot of attention. And tonight we saw so many different areas of our city funding that have some level of involvement for federal funding. And so today our federal debt level is $34 trillion. And so it is really imperative that those who work on the federal budget make sure that their fiscal house in order, because cities' budgets are highly dependent upon federal budgets. So if there was ever any kind of major pullback on federal spending for cities, we are in big trouble. There is no way in the world we could run SIRIDE or many of the other programs without this federal funding. And so that's just sort of an FYI, just to help us be aware of the relationship between the federal debt and what we do as a city.
Rachel?
Nothing tonight. Nothing for me.
I just want to echo that was a very strong program, the Martin Luther King program last night, and continuing to keep Perry in our thoughts and prayers with the principal they're having passed. So
Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, thank you for those of you that worked on that committee for that event last night too. That was what was really great. I loved it, and it was a great turnout. It was really heartening to see, and yeah, I thought that was great too. So, nothing else for me though.
Thank you. I just have a point of clarification. I think that we are self-sufficient in terms of operations, but there are projects and things that we do get funding from the federal government, certainly SIRIDE. But I don't want to necessarily have this dire forecast that the federal government goes, haywire, that we're going to go haywire, because there's a lot of self-sufficiency. But I don't disagree at all that there are some, we saw federal funding. That was one of the questions that was on the SRF, the funding that we use for our wastewater treatment plant, water plant. That does help in terms of gets us a lower interest rate. If that goes away or the interest rate goes way up, it just means that all of us will pay more for water, sewer, and electric. But I just want just point of clarification that it's not, our operations don't depend upon it, but it does, except for SIRIDE, that does provide some money. So anyway.
SIRIDE's very dependent on it.
Yes, it is.
And not just SIRIDE, there isn't a transit system, there isn't a bus system in the country that is self-sufficient.
Yep. No. And I think a good portion of the capital improvements have been done over there. Our equipment, good portion of that money does come from grants, and we'd be really hamstrung. All right, with that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yep. All right, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.